What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. We are all very happy to be here. Today, Brittany and I are going to be interviewing with a familiar face. We've had Mariana on the channel before in the past.
Yay.
Welcome, Mariana. We spoke with Mariana in regards to immigration.
You will not get permanent unless you have the retirement age from your country and are receiving a pension.
Today, we want to talk with Mariana. We're very excited to talk with Mariana about the benefits of hiring a lawyer to represent you in case you want to buy property in Mexico. We're going to get into why this is going to be very, very important. And we're also going to talk about how Mariana, with her company MAXLIFE YUCATÁN, can help you personally if you need to facilitate a property purchase. This is near and dear to Brittany and I because we actually just recently purchased a home here in Mexico. And we wish we had someone like Mariana with us. Unfortunately, we didn't purchase where Mariana currently works, but Mariana is a vast wealth of knowledge. So if you ever had questions or you want to purchase in the area of which Mariana works, you can always reach out to her. I just want to touch on real quick why it was such a nightmare for me. And
Sure.
Mariana, I think you're going to be really feeling this. You're gonna really,
Already.
yeah, you already know. When Brittany and I came to Mexico and we were looking to purchase a home, we didn't know where we wanted to purchase, who we were going to go with, and gratefully we met Wendy Howard over here in the Lakeside area, who was a trustworthy person, and we felt good about working with her. But essentially, I gave my entire life savings to a complete stranger, hoping that complete stranger was going to do right by me. And Wendy did. But if you are familiar with Mexico, any single person in the world can basically wake up and be your real estate agent.
Yeah.
I can wake up tomorrow.
Yeah.
Brittany can wake up tomorrow and be a real estate agent. And
Yes.
that's pretty scary because I don't know anything about real estate. So why should we, Mariana, why should the public be working with a real estate lawyer such as yourself when it comes to purchasing a property?
It's super important first to say that those scary stories, oh, I have many. But but in reality, I think I always tell my clients, most of my clients are very knowledgeable persons. It's not maybe their first buy, maybe they've bought in their own country, but definitely coming to another country with totally different laws, maybe you don't even know the language or you know it a little bit, but not the legal side of it, can be scary for sure. It's the same thing if I went somewhere else and I wanted to buy, I think I would feel the same way. And like you mentioned, no, if it's something that maybe you were looking forward to, but you saved for it, you worked for it, you want to make sure that it's something legal and that is something safe. And it's super important to at least understand a little bit the process. That way you can compare to what people tell you or what you read online and make sure that this is going the right way, right? And I think to start, I would say it's important just with, as we talked about in the last video with immigration, to have somebody that knows about the matter, be able to help you not just know if the property is ready and clean to be able to buy it, but also to understand how to buy as a foreigner. And we touched a little bit about this in the last video, but there's certain restrictions in Mexico in regards to the property, you know, and there's the Article 27 in our Constitution that states that anything within 100 kilometers from borders and 50 kilometers from the ocean is part of a restricted zone. So if I'm a foreigner, I'm coming to buy under beach area, for example, which of course is within those 50 kilometers, it's all part of this restricted zone, in which according to that article, as a foreigner, even if you're a resident, you cannot have the direct ownership of that land, okay? If it's outside of those 150 kilometers, there's still a permit that you need to get from the SRE, the Secretary of Foreign Affairs, but it's a little bit easier. So it's important to know, like, first of all, I like this property. What is my situation? how am I going to buy? This is like the first thing that we talk about with people when we have the first consulting, understanding where they want to buy and then have them understand what is the process. And definitely, like you mentioned before, coming with the agents, no, there's people that are very trustworthy and it's so good to find them, especially when you like a property and you really want that one and there's nobody else around that you know. But there has been horror stories, right? And the important thing to note is that not every state in Mexico forces a license on you to be a real estate agent. So in reality, for example, in my field in Yucatan area, anybody can be a real estate agent. And that's why there's so many real estate agents and so many horror stories, because one thing is to show a property, which of course it has its you need to know, right, how to show a property, the good things, the bad things, how to make the person fall in love with it, but also it's important to know how to protect the person. That's where we come in. We try to make it, like I said, a legal, a safe, an exciting thing, that excitement of buying your house doesn't diminish because of problems, right? And if there's problems, well, we go ahead and help you.
So essentially, if we had you with us when we were looking to buy our property, I feel like I would have been able to be calm throughout the whole process and really enjoy it. For me, it was not calm at all. I'm dealing with my banks in the United States. I'm trying to move money over to a completely foreign bank, the real estate owner's bank. I have to find out last minute that I need this paperwork, this paperwork, this paperwork. If I grew my hair out for you to actually see it, you would have been seeing it fall out of my head. It was a horrible process. And gratefully, it was good, but so many times I would reach out to the agent wouldn't get back to me. A week goes by, it's like, I sent all this money. What's going on? Where's my money? While I'm trying to work, while I'm trying to deal with my family life,
Yes,
you already know what's necessary for properties to be bought. You already know how to deal with the real estate agent, maybe the notario. You can basically kind of take the reins, essentially. Okay.
definitely. I even call it even taking you by the hand and we're gonna go through this together. But yeah,
Oh,
and it is important. I think that, right now that I myself even I'm buying, I think my first mine bought property and I went through certain situations. So I think that somebody saying, I'm gonna take by the hand and I'm gonna help you, it's just a sweet thing, right? And if it's work, but I'm really passionate about it. I think that everybody should know at least the basics around this, just so that again, it's something that is done the right way and you can enjoy it, right? Look back and say, oh, I enjoyed my process of buying the house. And yeah, there's certain documents that have to be filled from start to finish. So pretty much what MaxLife does is, to put an example, if this is me, I'm coming to Mexico, I want to buy a property. What's the first thing we do? Like I mentioned, we do a consulting. We essentially try to understand if you have a property in mind, if you don't have a property in mind. If you do, then the idea is to start with a title search. In a lot of countries, that term is very, very known. It's just an investigation of the
Mhm.
property in a legal way. That means, is the property clean? Is it under a loan? Is it ready to be sold, or does it have to be divided? Any of those things we find out in that investigation. And some of my clients tell me, does that mean that I can't buy it? No. But many of those things that we find in that investigation will help us to create the promissory contract, which essentially means it's a promise to buy. It's a document that when me as a buyer, I'm going to give some kind of money. This document protects my money. It pretty much sets the rules and regulations from that point that I'm giving an upfront deposit all the way until I sign my final title. So it's really important to know this so that we can put it in the promissory and avoid certain things in the future.
Mariana, what could happen if someone says, "Oh, I don't really want to spend the extra money. I don't really need to do this." What could happen? Because you've probably seen a lot of things. What could happen if someone doesn't want to do that?
Yeah.
Like,
Go to the
go
lawyer,
through a lawyer,
and
right?
yeah,
Yeah, that's a very good question. Honestly, it is an extra expense. And so many times for people, especially when you're buying under a budget, I feel like you think, is it really necessary? Like I'm already going to a notario, which essentially is the person who does the title, registers it. They have lawyers. So it's like, why would I pay somebody to represent me? And plus I have a real estate agent. I would like to tell you some of my clients' stories just so you kind of understand and how it could be avoided, right? So for example, I have one client, it's been 6 years since he finished paying his property, but he hasn't been able to title it. And this has been, I think, my worst case. But the reason why, and it's a little bit, to me, it's a bit frustrating because it could have been avoided, is even though in the promissory contract that we just talked about, it was put that he had to do a fideicomiso. Fideicomiso is a trust. It's a way to buy, one of the ways to buy under restricted zone. Even though it said it, he didn't understand what that meant. Plus, he never came back after that. So from the States, he just kept paying, 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 paying. And then when it was time to title his last payment, they said, okay, you need to do your fideicomiso. And then the pandemic came. He didn't understand anything of what that meant. And turns out he got to us and he's like, it's been 5 years and I can't title. And to be honest with you, it's taken us about a year. And the reason is because under that developer who was selling that property, there's multiple other companies. And
Wow.
Oh,
so
wow.
doing a fideicomiso, it's a lot of documentation. And what we found, which is something we try to avoid from the beginning, or we try to minimize as much as possible, is resistance. No, I do not want to give this document, but you need to. I mean, you're the seller, you need to do it. No. So we had to go multiple times to the developer, explain to them, pretty much even show them how we go through to authority and pretty much, let the authority know what they were doing that was against the law until they finally started cooperating. So we're hoping to finally be able to finalize this process in a couple of months. But it's been essentially 5 years and then 1 year that we've had it. So six years that he could already be, using the property, or it's a lot. So maybe built on it, sold it, who knows, so many things.
Wow.
And it was because of that, right? Again, this is the side of the buyer, right? He didn't know. And it's normal. Many times you just think, I just pay, and then when the time comes, we'll just sign. But it wasn't like that. And then on the other side, we had a client, and this was with us, but there was still resistance. We explained to them what they had to give. When you do a trust of fideicomiso, and it's a company, it goes so deep into the companies that they even have to present as partners a document of their husband or wife. And that's where we see a lot of resistance, right? It's a lot of personal information. And
Right.
so we had calls with them, we explained it. There was resistance. We had everything ready to sign in December. The only reason why we haven't signed up to this day, we're hoping to sign in a few days, is because the seller didn't want to give the documents. We were ready. We had the permit, we had the documents from the buyer, our client, everything. But there was still resistance, and they had us. So imagine if they didn't, right? If they didn't know, if maybe the company said, I don't care, you can go sue me if you want to. But no, you need to go after them. Not meaning in the lawsuit, right? But just show them the promissory says this, you agree to this. And like you said, that takes time. So in the end, there's a little bit of, I would say, scary stories. I'm not saying don't buy in Mexico. It's a reason why we suggest that people have somebody to represent them. And many times in these occasions, what happens with the notario? The clients contact us after and they say, the notario doesn't want to do anything. He's just asking me for the list of documentation from the seller, because he doesn't have time to go ahead and be pretty much, I'm going to say this, it's not like that, but pretty much harassing the seller so that
Right.
he can get the documents, right? So we come in there and we actually help the notario to finish in time. We help the buyer, the notario, the real estate agent we help them to combine efforts so that this goes through.
I have another question. So we have a good number of subscribers and people who watch us that are Mexican. Is it good for a Mexican to also go through like you guys, a lawyer? Is that important too, as well, not just foreigners?
It's important. And it depends. If we're talking about the buyer, I think in the case of the buyer, the documents that the notary asks, if you're Mexican, are more straightforward. I can tell you we've had Mexicans in this case. The reason is, and the majority have been, we also do the nationality process. So essentially, if your parents were Mexican or your grandparents, you can be a Mexican. So you're a Mexican, maybe you have a voting card, but you don't know the laws of the country. Because maybe you grew up in the States, you grew up in Canada, you're in Europe, or you're too busy. Because it happens, right? Like you said, we have a life. We have many times there's been problems with the family and they cannot be dealing with this. So essentially, having a lawyer to represent you is something good for everybody. Even for a Mexican, it's good. And we've even had clients that sell to foreigners ask us to represent them because they want it to be a process that they understand. Because I'm selling you a property, I'm a Mexican, but I don't understand how you need to buy. So I need to understand that so that I can help and this can go through. Right. So it's something that can be helpful for everybody, but definitely, I would say definitely more if you don't know the laws of the country.
Yeah. And when you're dealing with a real estate agent, they might be the nicest real estate agent in the world, but it doesn't mean that they actually know the law.
Right.
So you might end up going to a certain point with the real estate agent. They might hold your hand. They want that sale. So they're going to be helping you as much as they can. But if they don't know the law, they might put you in a position that could end up hurting you later just for that sale.
Definitely. We just had a case like that, actually very dear to my heart because it was a family member. And again, she is Mexican, but she never lived here. She lives abroad. And they've been waiting also around 5 years. And the real estate agent was really nice. They actually took them, they found a really nice property, what she wanted. And the problem is it's been 5 years and she actually just backed down of the deal after 5 years.
Wow.
Because the property wasn't ready to be sold. It was under hereditary process along with it had to be subdivided in the future. And so what we did at MaxLife, because we represented her, is in the promissory, we protected as much as we could the money. We actually told the person, this is not a good idea, but if you're going to keep going, we're going to make sure to protect your money as much as we can. So that's what we did. But in the end, it doesn't always work out, but at least her money was protected and she was able to get it back, which was good. But it doesn't always happen, right? So again, like the agents, we don't go against agents. We don't go against notaries. We actually prefer to work together. And right now, what we do at MaxLife is we actually have meetings with real estate companies to be able to assist, to say, look, you can do your job, we can do our job, and your client's happy. Because that's the idea. The client leaves happy, then you're happy, the client's happy, we're all happy. And that's what we need to see when it's a real estate process, because it's illusion. It's something that people maybe wait all their life for. So we want it to be protected.
Yeah, I feel like it's really important, especially if the person, like me, for example, especially if I'm not there in Mexico, I would want you, a lawyer who knows the law, to represent me and like facilitate that. But even if I am in Mexico, I would still personally, I would feel more comfortable if I had the extra money to spend. I mean, if you're spending, I don't know, $300,000, $400,000 USD, however many pesos that is, when you're spending that, what's like, I don't know, a few thousand more here or there? Because if I'm coming to this country and I want to buy a house, I want to know that the real estate agent and the notario aren't working together in order to sell me something that may not be good. Because most real estate agents and notarios work together. I'm not saying they're bad, that's bad.
Yeah.
But I want a separate person involved who has no relationship with that real estate agent and that notario.
Exactly. Because in reality, that's what happens. Right? And sometimes real estate agents get mad at us. And I mean, I'm being totally honest. And I tell my clients this, sometimes that happens, but my job is to protect you. My job is not it's not them to like me. My job is to represent you. is to protect your money. That's my job. And so it comes to a point where, yeah, that could happen. But in general, we've been able to find, there's everything, right? Really good real estate agents, some that don't like us going in. But in the end, this is about you, about the buyer. This is what's the most important thing.
Yeah, and if the real estate agent, in my opinion, tell me if I'm wrong, but if the real estate agent doesn't like you being there, that means there's something going on that shouldn't be going on, or they're looking to rush the process. I mean, at the end of the day, this is not supposed to be something that's rushed. Like you said, it should be relaxed and a nice experience, and every single facet of this experience needs to be looked at.
Definitely. And I mean, that's why it's important, that first consulting that we have, that we talk about the stages, right? And we be honest, right? This is as fast as it has to be, and as fast as the parts want it to be. Because again, every party needs to do their job.
Right.
And that makes it a whole thing, right? The purchase. So it's important.
Yeah, very important. I've heard some stories. I mean, and of course, I've also heard stories about this kind of thing happening in the United States as well. But I've heard some stories about where somebody comes to Mexico, they want to buy a property. The real estate agent that sells them the property knows the person who's selling. And so you're going into this thinking, okay, I'm going to buy this great property. And then all of a sudden you find out that they sold you a property that technically wasn't even theirs to sell. And so you gave your money away. You got a piece of paper that was supposedly the title, and it's not a title. You never bought the property. The sister of the guy who sold you the property is really the owner. So all this crazy stuff happens, and no matter where you are in the world, there's scams.
Yes, definitely.
But having a lawyer is going to make sure that none of that affects you. So if you do buy a property, essentially, or sign something saying you're going to buy a property, and you find out, no, this doesn't belong to them, your money's protected.
Exactly. And then, I mean, that we can find out starting from the title search, which is a big thing, right? Even before you give money, even before you sign anything, this is super important. And that's why we get clients sometimes in the middle of the process, sometimes, like we mentioned, like sometimes 3 years after. But ideally, when should a property lawyer be hired? From the moment that you're thinking about buying, because it's important, again, to understand the process, but also to do that title search. It saves a lot of problems. And again, if a property is not ready at that moment to be sold, it doesn't matter. If you really want it, it can be worked out. But it needs to be worked out in the promissory. It needs to be signed by both parties so that everybody knows what needs to happen and what their obligations are. So that's really important.
And so for those who are watching, and let's say someone's thinking, oh, I want to buy a property and I want to have a real estate lawyer and I want to go with Mariana, what states does your company work in?
Right now we're working in Yucatán, which is the south of Mexico. Here, a lot of people come to buy at the ocean. They really like the beach side. Also downtown, there's a lot of renovation downtown. Old colonial house is really pretty. And there's a lot of projects going on right now here. A lot, just more than enough to count with all my hands and toes. But we also work in Quintana Roo, specifically in Cozumel, which is an island. There's more vacation rentals, and people buy to do Airbnb. So right now we're in those two states. Even though whatever we talk about right now here it is good to know no matter where you're buying in Mexico, because the Constitution, Article 27 about the restricted zone, that's federal. It's everywhere in Mexico. The promissory, the offer, that's also everywhere in Mexico. But if you would like to buy here, definitely we can help you. And if not, these principles apply no matter where, because it's always good to have somebody to help you along with this and at least to know the basics.
Right, 100%. I'm happy that we have you on here because I just want to tell the audience, we are actually friends. We're not being paid to do this video. We're actually friends. We know this person in real life. She's a real human being. And so a lot of people will ask us, who can I trust? Like, so in other places, we've recommended real estate agents because we can personally vet that person. So we can personally tell you, if you need help, Mariana is here. She's very trustworthy. You don't have to worry about any crazy shady stuff. So we get asked all the time.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, and another thing I want to mention is you mentioned a couple of times something that I really want people to focus on. You mentioned a couple of times that sometimes you'll have people come to you 3 years into their journey of buying a property. Guys, that is bad. That's really bad. They should have came to the lawyer in the beginning. The reason they're going to the lawyer 3 years later is because they ran into problems. But if you go to the lawyer first, you're not going to have problems, because that's the whole job of the lawyer. You're paying that extra money for convenience, and you're paying that extra money for to be assured that your money and you as a person are in a good, safe place. So don't go 3 years later. Spend the money up front. That's my opinion. That's what I wish I could have done, but I didn't have you here with me. So I really wish that could have been done. Just like with immigration, same thing. Brittany and I, when we got our immigration paperwork, you could of course do it yourself, but you're going through headaches. Like, you're going back and forth from the immigration office. Oh, you signed it in the wrong color ink. Oh,
There's a wrinkle in the paper.
there's a wrinkle in the paper, so you need to go get a new copy.
It sounds
If
funny,
we-
but it's true.
Yeah, it sounds hilarious, but this is what you'll deal with when you're in a foreign country, you don't speak the language well, and you don't know the laws. But if you have a lawyer do the immigration paperwork for you, Mariana can be telling the immigration office, look, they don't need to sign it in this color ink. It doesn't matter that there's a wrinkle. And half the time, they're not going to bother trying to mess around with a lawyer anyway. They're just going to be like, no problem. Here's what you need.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, the whole point of this is that you feel safe, and that you feel that somebody is there helping you again side to side. And I think it's also important to note that, it's also a thing that happens here, that people say will tell you exactly what they want, or the process of how they want you to buy. So they'll be like, okay, buy through a company. And this happens, and I'll be honest why. I've seen it happen, especially when you run into a company that does LLCs for a living, right? And so they'll be like, you need to buy through an LLC. Or maybe be like, oh, you need to buy through a trust, or you don't need any, right? And so we are completely neutral. Like, we tell you, look, you can buy through this. It's going to be like this, going to cost you this, or you can buy this way. We think that this way is better. And many times clients come with this idea, right? I want an LLC. I want an LLC. And they
Right.
leave with the trust, right? But it's important to explain why. And something that a lot of people don't know in regards to this. And again, we're talking about restricted zone here. If you're buying outside of that restricted zone, there's another permit that you need. But in the restricted zone, many people think it's interchangeable. Like, I can buy through a trust or a property. But in reality, looking close into the law, if you're buying for commercial purposes, here's a company. You can buy through a Mexican company. But if you're buying only for housing purposes, you should be buying through a trust. And it's not interchangeable. It's true that many times when they go to authority and they buy through a company, they just say, oh, it's for commercial use. But it's not really. Many people just buy for their own housing. So it's very important to know this, because later on in life, what if there's a problem and they see, oh, you bought through a company, it was supposed to be housing, and you get yourself into a fine or a problem, right? But it's not interchangeable. That's why in the beginning, it's important to know, why do you want to buy this for? And there's even a third one. A lot of people of our clients have bought through foreign LLCs. So they do an LLC in the States, for example, and that LLC buys in Mexico through a trust. And there's benefits and there's cons, but it depends your case. It depends what you're willing to do for the next years. Why do you want it? The benefits, for example, of having a trust is that in itself, it's already a will. You can already put who will own it in case of your death. And it could be multiple people. The case of the company, you're not the sole owner. it's a company.
Right.
So there's good, there's cons, there's pros, and it's important to analyze them to make the process easier, to make the process better, if you can say it that way.
Yes, more safe and more convenient
Yeah.
for your purposes, essentially.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much,
Thank you.
Mariana.
It was really great information.
Yeah. And Mariana, did you have anything else that you wanted to mention?
Yeah, I think essentially what we're trying to do at Max Life right now is we want to make sure, and along with chasing the American dream, which is just make reliable information available to more people, right? And it's really important. I have a lot of clients who come to me with Facebook posts. And there's nothing wrong with Facebook. I'm not saying Facebook is wrong, but it's always good to look for reliable sources. And if there's something that you want to know about property, go ahead. I mean, I'm sure they will mention it. Put it in the comments. Send us a message to MaxLife Yucatan. Tell us if there's something that you would want us to talk about, because it's important to find reliable information. Of course, personalized is always better through a consulting, but it's really, really good to look for reliable sources. And right now, we actually have a project coming up. We'll probably talk about this a little bit later in another video, but we have the project of TL Real Estate. And so we're doing only exclusives, people who want to sell their properties give us an exclusivity. And what we do is we actually do the title search from the beginning. So that when you come through us and if you want to buy a property, then here you go. Here are these houses, lots that we've already pre-checked. They're already
Wow.
ready to be sold.
That's
If you don't
great.
like any, we have business partners that can help you find the property of your dreams, but at least it's a network of professionals that can definitely help you to make this a more enjoyable process in any way.
That's fantastic.
Great.
All right, everybody. So we hope that you all found this information helpful. Check the description in case you do want to get in touch with Mariana for any reason. Let me ask you guys, if you want to see a video talking about how to prepare for buying real estate in Mexico, let us know in a comment, and we will make sure that we get in touch with Mariana so you can discuss that.
And please don't forget to like and subscribe to see more content like this.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mariana.
No, thanks for inviting me. See you all next time as well.
All right.
Right.
Adios.
Bye. Hasta luego.